Hello and welcome to today's edition of Velocity Kinetics. Today we are doing an episode of We Answer. Now, this We Answer, it's a bit contentious in many ways. It goes back to a debate I've had with my dad quite a few times. When my dad buys a new car, he quite often, has nearly always said he wants more power. Just about every single car he's bought that I can think of, he's wanted it more powerful than the last. His argument is, if you find yourself in a tough situation, you've got the power to get yourself out of it. My argument is, you shouldn't have put yourself in that situation in the first place. So, who's right? Let's get to it, shall we? So, first off, the situation. Who's right, who is wrong? Well, we're both right and we're both wrong in many ways. He's right because he's thinking of situations where you find yourself in where you might have made a miscalculation and then in turn need to power out of it. I'm thinking of that you should have done your observations and not need to power out. Sorry, my landlord's doing something over there, and don't know if you can hear it on the microphone or not. He's doing something, and it sounds like he's knocking. Who knows? My dad is right in the sense of you find yourself in a situation that whether you've put yourself in it or not, you've got the power to get out of it. But it's not necessarily just a question of power. It's not necessarily just a question of horsepower. You need torque as well. You can get engines that are high brake horsepower but not very good with the torque. Granted, usually torque is a byproduct of horsepower, but doesn't mean to say that the torque is accessible. Doesn't mean to say that the power is accessible. You might have a car that's got 300-400 horsepower, but it might not be accessible until 5,000-6,000 RPM. Quite often common with things like the Honda VTEC engines and rotary engines as well. Power seems to be very high up the range, and some smaller V6s and V8s as well. Diesels tend to dump the power at the low end, but then you get stuck with wheel spin. So it's not really clear, if you look at it like that, it's not really clear which is the right way around it. Ultimately, I would say my approach is right, but not necessarily for just observations. You shouldn't be putting yourself in that situation in the first place because you've got the power to lift off, etc. But my argument is also you shouldn't be, well, if you're trying to put the power down, you've got to be in a position to be able to use that power. If you've got a car with a very long first gear, and if you're trying to build up your speed, then you're going to have to keep going in that gear until you're out of puff before you can change it. You can't necessarily rapidly shoot through the gears unless you've got an automatic. Then that'll help you with a little bit with the change time, or unless you're brave enough to power shift in a manual car, and that's your synchro and your clutch. A lot also depends on your driving skill and your driving ability and your confidence. Because some people will see a smaller gap and go, oh, I can make it. Not as in, oh, I'm going to make it. As in, some people might be more confident in their ability to make the gap. I'm naturally more hesitant behind the wheel, so there are probably plenty of times if I'd been driving with my dad, he probably would have had a go at me for being too hesitant. And both of my driving instructors said sometimes I'm a little too, I can border towards a little too hesitant, which I do my best on, but ultimately, in my position of driving seat, I'm the best judge of what I want to do. Power isn't always the answer, is basically it. Now, don't get me wrong, I challenge you to find a driver, and I'm not going to say man or woman, because there are men and women that fall in the, oh, I don't need more power category, and there are men and women who fall into the, yes, more power category. But I think more people there are a lot of people who would always be, well, I could have actually done with a few more horsepower there. I could have done with a little bit more ability to to get away quickly there. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. Who doesn't want a little bit more power? I wouldn't say no to another 10-20 horsepower out of my Baleno engine, but it's all about how you apply it. And ultimately, if it's a case of you're just looking to get away from the lights quickly, as long as you're not breaking the speed limit or any antisocial driving laws and regulations, depending on where you live, more power isn't necessarily a bad thing in that situation. But if your argument for more power is it gets you out of situations, then that's not the best thing to have. Like I said, ultimately, you should not be finding yourself in that sort of position in the first place. So we answer what's right. More power to help you get out of a situation, or your observations. If you're finding yourself in a position where you've put yourself in, more power is not the solution. More observation is the solution. More power to do your observations is the solution. Just not sticking your foot through the firewall. More power is a solution if you're pulling more heavy loads. So, for instance, if you pull trailers. So don't get me wrong, there are situations where more power is required, and a good thing. But for the most part, it's about how you apply it. So if you're looking for more power to get yourself out of a sticky situation, then that is on you. But if it's more power to go about doing your day-to-day living, then it's fine. Now, this has been quite a brief episode of Velocity Kinetics because, well, as I said in the last video, I'm got a lot more things on with work. Sarah and I are wedding planning, so there's not an awful lot I can do. I'm trying my best to get content out. Lockdown blues don't help sometimes, and what we can and can't do in lockdown doesn't help. But I will say, and anyone, you don't need to have a partner who works, or fiance, or husband, or wife, whatever word you want to use. Binary, non-binary, I don't care. When you've got a significant other that works night shifts, particularly things like medical, when they work night shifts, and sometimes when you go 3-4 days where you might see them for 20 minutes and that's it, it starts to get on your nerves, and you have to make time for each other. So Sarah and I are trying to make time for each other where we can, and I've done a lot more training where I am now and trying to make progress there. And the other thing is as well, not just lockdown blues. Myself, I haven't felt the last week and a half. I've felt extremely depressed over a lot of things, and it's sort of goes from being really upset about I'm not sure what to being quite cross. Now, some people would say that's just my anxiety, which it might very well just be my anxiety playing up. But it doesn't help my ability to want to do things sometimes. Even going out for a walk every lunch like I have done this week, I've managed to do about, I think it's on average about 0.9 of a mile in 15 minutes on my lunch break, which, is it quick? Well, for me it is. Is it good? Is it bad? Not sure, but for someone of my 21, 22 stone frame, I think it's quite an impressive number, especially as I'm just in my normal work clothes. I haven't put any special trainers on or anything like that. So, there we are. The only way I can put it, and I wish it was me who had this thought. I wish I'd had this thought, but there was it's an episode of NCIS. I think it's season 15, episode 2. So it's just after Gibbs and McGee have been released from where they were being held prisoner and tortured. Gibbs says, just because I'm laughing and cracking jokes doesn't mean that I'm okay. It just means I'm okay enough. Maybe. Which, today has been the best mood I've felt all week. Whether it's because it's Friday, which could be it. Could it be because it's been a lot more sunny? Maybe. I've never really, that I know of, had seasonal affective disorder. But I guess what I'm trying to get at, people, is just content isn't coming out as quickly as I want because of personal stuff. Some of it is mental health related because I, need time for me to do my stuff and switch off, etc., etc. But what I'm also getting at as well, guys, is if you're not feeling right, then, let's talk it out in the comments. Let's help each other. Let's power through as best as we can. Kind of links it back into what we're talking about, wouldn't it? Let's power through everything as best as we can. Whether it's lockdown related or COVID related or just not a good day, because you're allowed to not have a good day. Let's just help each other and get through it. And look after yourselves. Drive safe. And I'm not sure when the next one of these is going to be out. I've got a winter driving video that I've got about 4 videos recorded for. I have no idea what order I'm connecting those in. And I still haven't finished the video for it. So God knows when that'll be out. But like I said, look after yourselves. Take care. And we'll see you. Hopefully we can get another one out in this month of February. But God knows.